to get that out to the various hubs. So I think our investment strategy will be to maximise in Ascara and make that, I suppose, the key water supply plan. So, I think at times we don't see it as the advantage that it is. And I think we look at the Dublin debate, where Dublin is beginning to see that a lack of water is eventually going to curtail its development. All we need, I suppose, is an investment in terms of another tranche to get it up to another level.
Just in the road schemes that you talked about, is there one in particular that you would like the NRA to get started, or are they all equally important?
Well, I suppose we're all agreed that the interchanges on the South Ring Road are the next priority, and the N28. So in terms of regional strategy and the city and county in our presentations to various ministers and the NRA, there are priorities. I would ask, I suppose I would pose the question that the NRA at this point in time have given us about $1 million to bring forward the Atlantic Corridor, which is running from Limerick to Cork. That's moving at a rapid pace in terms of planning and design. And maybe when we're post-budget, and we know, let's say, what the investment levels that the NRA will have in the future, I think we need to look at what will maximise the return to Cork. And I think you also have to bear in mind that if there's a national priority to look at the Atlantic Corridor, and you continue to put forward other roads as your priorities, tactically you may find that the West may say, well, we'll go with the Atlantic Corridor and the money will flow that way. Up to now, if you go to the NRA and you look for anything that's not on the interurban routes, you're told the national priority is interurban routes. So you try and position yourself in relation to those schemes. So I think we probably need to keep our minds open in terms of post-budget, what's the allocation to the NRA, and what's the national view in relation to the next priority. If it is, in my mind, if it is the Atlantic Corridor, sometimes you're better off to follow where it's easier to secure funding.
I just wanted to ask, you referred to the cap update and you referred to the draft council plan, and it was a moment to think that the adoption of the cap update has been held up, but pending the voting on the proposed amendments to the draft council plan. And I just wanted to ask about your views on the inclusion of any more in the proposed amendments to the draft plan, and I'm just wondering if you think there is a chance that the Minister will be asked to review the plan, and is there anything in the legislation that prevents you as a council manager from taking that step given the divergence from regional policy?
You have any more of that question, no? But I suppose after all, I'm a mere public servant. I suppose the process is important, first of all. I think we have a task strategy. I think it has worked. It has served us very, very well in terms of the rail strategy. The county development plan process is a process where we have professional advice, the manager's views. You have the elected members, and we have investors. We have view of the stakeholders out there. So the process, I suppose, is in the process at this point in time. In the public arena, I suppose, I stake my claim in relation to my view of it. That's the professional view in relation to the assessment of it. It's now over the public domain. If we believe in the public process, it's important that anybody and everybody who has a view in relation to it will make that view known. And I suppose, like all things, I can't prejudge what I'm going to decide to do until I've seen all those views. The Minister has his own views. I wouldn't presume to suggest how the Minister will look at it, but I think what's important is that I always think local is better than national. I would certainly be relying on the Minister to tell us how to do our business. I think that would be a retrograde step in terms of a lot of what we've achieved in CAS. We're seen as the leaders in terms of regional and sub-regional planning. I think that's probably at stake in terms of how we deal with the county development plan. So I urge us to get on with our business locally and have the debate, bring it to council. I'll express my views when I've seen all the submissions. And I think we should make the right decision locally, and we shouldn't be relying on national interventions to make sure we run Cork County Council and the region well. Because I think once you do that once, you lose the potential that I have as county manager to argue on behalf of the county, and the city manager to argue on behalf of the city, and saying we know what we're doing here, we know how to plan the region, we know what investment we need. I think the day we depart with that brand that we have achieved is the day we probably put ourselves down the list in terms of being able to secure investment. So it's not really an answer, but I think the process is more important at this point in time than the answer, because the county development plan is about getting people involved in what we want to happen. Too often I think people tend to allow it to happen, and then as soon as the planning application comes along, we're faced with a lot of responses as to how this could happen. So now is the time to make people's views known. Now is the decision process. And I think we will make the right decision in the end. I'd welcome an easy question now.
And you mentioned public and private partnership. Any ideas on how that can be developed, given the importance reflected in your presentation on that?
I don't have it fully developed, Michael, but I do think, I suppose when you look back at local government, I think it's done very well in the bad times. And in the bad times, we all have to make harder decisions and make better decisions. I do think we have something in Cork where the public and private do interact very, very well. And I think the challenge for us is to find ways that we can make things happen. Now, the problem for all of us, I suppose, at this point in time is the banking world is in total disarray. So the normal model where the public sector couldn't find it and the private sector could was a model where you could decide to do things and fund it over a period of time. I don't have a clear answer to the question, but I do think if you look at Ireland in a couple of years' time, I think it's where the public and private get together and make things happen is going to be the deciding factor, because the public finances isn't going to be able to fund a lot of things we'd like to do. So we need to decide ourselves between us what is it that we need to do and get on with it. So I think Cork has a better track record than a lot of other areas in making that happen. So I suppose the reason I put it up there is because there tends to be a division developing between the public and private. The public tends to be seen now in negative terms. It's all seen as a morass together. Up until recently, the private sector was seen as the masters of the universe, and was the expression they put on it. I think we're all now in the same problems, that the world isn't as organised as we thought. But I think if we get back together, we have a better chance, rather than, I suppose, the private knocking spots off the public sector and the public sector spending its time defending itself, and we don't get out anything useful in the meantime. Okay, thank you all very much.
Thanks very much, Martin, for an insightful presentation. Just to thank Roland from Shared Visions again. This presentation will be webcast and will be available on the Chamber's website, effective from tomorrow. So thanks very much for that, Roland. If I could just bring to your attention the half-day business conference that we're having in the Rochestown Park, which is taking place on the 23rd of October, beginning at 12:30 and finishing at 5 o'clock. And just to give you an indication of who's speaking at it, we have Tom Parham, who's the Director General of the CIF, will be speaking. Anthony Dinan, who, as most of you know, is the Group Managing Director of Thomas Crosby Holdings. Barry O'Connell, who's a partner in KPMG in town and is leading the Chamber's efforts in the whole area of financial services. John Dunn, who's the Chairman of the IDA, will be down. We've asked Dr. Brendan Murphy, the President of CIT, to speak as well. And John Beggs, the Chief Economist from the AIB, will be there. And lastly, William Batt, who's the Divisional Director for Indicon, who, as you've heard in Martin's presentation, are involved in a number of different capacities in both the city and the county from a development point of view. The conference chairman this year is going to be John Walsh, who's the editor of Business and Finance. So I think we've got a pretty reasonable lineup that should make an interesting half-day session that we should be worthwhile attending. So I'd encourage you to attend that. So with that, I'll close the session, and as they say in the US, have a nice day.